Hi, I'm Bonnie Barker with BonnieBayCrochet.com, and I want to welcome you to the video where we're going to learn how to make the wrap scarf called Liffy in a Jiffy. This is available. The pattern is available in my book Contemporary Celtic Crochet, along with 20 other patterns that are inspired by the country of Ireland during a visit there many years ago. Okay. This is also National Crochet Month in March 2019, and one reason that I'm actually bringing this pattern to you, and I'm going to be bringing some others from my other publications to you real soon, is that March 2019 also signifies the 10-year anniversary of when my first crochet patterns were published, and I'll be bringing some opportunities to win some of those later on this month. Okay, but let's go ahead and get started. For this project, I'm actually going to be substituting some yarn from my yarn stash. This is Lion Brand Yarns Homespun. It's yarn that I got on sale a while back. The color may or may not be available, Claret. I don't know if you can find that or not, but they have many other wonderful colors to choose from. Some people find this yarn a little challenging to work with because it's a little on the curly side. If that is you, feel free to substitute any other size 5 bulky weight yarn. Okay, so I'm going to show you the symbol there. For those of you who aren't familiar with yarn labels, whenever you see this little picture of a scan, that tells you the weight or the thickness of the yarn. And this particular scan has 185 yards. To complete this project, you will need 5 of these. And again, like I said, feel free to substitute what you would like. And the other thing that you're going to need, very important, is a size L or 11 or 8.00 millimeter crochet hook. And as always, I like to recommend a yarn needle, and be sure you have a pair of scissors handy. Okay. To begin, we were going to chain 42. So we start with our slip knot and then chain 42. Now you don't want to chain this too tightly. Okay, I would chain it on the loose side because we are going to need to work in these stitches. So go ahead and chain those 42 stitches. Okay, I now have my 42 stitches, and if you're a beginner, you can see that this is a little bit challenging to see the chains because of the the bulkiness of this yarn. But I promise you, after this first row, it's going to be very easy to work with, and I will explain. It'll show why I love this yarn so much. I just love the texture and just everything that it produces. But you have to use certain stitches, and I'll be showing you that. So now we're going to start by double crocheting into 4th chain from hook. Now, since it's a little challenging to see these stitches, it's very easy to feel them. So you could use, your finger and thumb here to see where the stitches are. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So in the 4th chain from hook, we are going to start right here, and it's easy to feel where these chains are, and I recommend that you depend on that more than your eyes for working in this chain. So go ahead and work a double crochet in each of these chains all the way across. After completing row 1, you should have a row that looks like this. Now, I did actually take the time to count to make sure that I had 39 double crochets plus the chain 3. This chain 3 does count as a double crochet in the written pattern. Okay, now we're ready to turn. We're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to double crochet in the first stitch, which is the first double crochet right here. Now we are going to begin working a braided cable, and I hope you find that this is not nearly as difficult as it sounds. Okay, first we're going to skip the first 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then we're going to work front post treble around each of the next 2 stitches like so. We wrap our hook 2 times, we work our hook around the body, let me show you, around the body of the stitch. It's like giving it a belt. Pull up a loop, and then you complete your treble crochet. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. It's a rather tall stitch. And we're going to do that again. Wrap the hook 2 times, put the hook around the stitch like this. This is a front post treble. Pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. It's like a double crochet, but a little bit taller, and it uses a little bit more yarn. Now we're going to do that again, and we're going to go do it over the first 2 stitches that we skipped. And as we do that, we're going to be working in front of these 2 stitches. It's going to feel like a long reach, but you'll get used to that. So we come over, and we're going to again wrap this around the body like a belt and complete that treble crochet, and then do it for the next stitch as well. Make sure you don't forget that second stitch. Okay, now we're going to do that in the next 2 stitches as well, because this braid has 3 parts to it. Even though it's not going to look like a braid after we finish this row, you have to just trust me on that it will eventually. So now we're going to front post treble in the next 2 stitches. Okay, I'm going to pause, and this is what the beginnings of the braid should look like. Okay, now we have these stitches in between the cabling parts. We're just going to work through the top loops like you normally would. Put a double crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. Just working through the top loops. Again, I know this yarn, it's harder to see, but trust me, it's worth it in the end, because it's such a nice yarn. But you can always use your fingers to kind of feel your way through the stitches and determine where you are. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is called the Celtic weave. This can be a little bit challenging, but just stick with me. It's very similar to what we just did, but it is a little different. Okay, we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and just like in starting the braid, we're going to front post treble with the around actually the next 2 stitches. Okay, we're just again wrapping this around, which is why this yarn is so easy for this design. Now we're going to do the same. We're going to work in front of these 2 stitches, and we're going to front post treble over the 2 stitches that we just skipped. Again, just like the braid, the first 2 things we do are the same. But after we do that, this is where the Celtic weave is different. We're just going to continue to do what we just did here, forming these 2 crosses. 2 stitches and then cross in front of those. Skip the next 2 stitches and front post treble in the next 2 stitches. And working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped. I'm using my finger and my thumb to tell me where that stitch is. Okay, let's pause. So now I have 2 crosses or 2 repeats of the Celtic weave. We're going to do this until we have 5, a total of 5 repeats for the center. And this would be a good time for me to tell you, for those of you who aren't as familiar with some of those little icons on the bottom of the screen, sometimes I apologize, I can get a little carried away and kind of go a little faster than I should for some of you. If that's the case, there's a little icon at the bottom about this part on the right-handed video. It looks like a little gear. If you click on that little gear, you can slow the video down to, I believe, up to half speed, maybe even slower. So you can do that if I'm going way too fast. Again, apologize if that happens. Just hit that little gear and you can slow me way down and still understand it. I may sound like a bass when I'm talking, but you'll be able to understand it and it will be much slower. Okay, so we've made 2 of these Celtic weave crosses. Let's do 3 more. Skip the next 2. Front post treble in the next 2 stitches. Working in front of these 2 stitches, front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped.
Okay, so that makes 3. Now we're going to do 2 more. Skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2. I know this is redundant, but part of learning is sometimes requires hearing things again and again. Front post treble in these 2 stitches that we skipped. And again, this row is probably the most important row setting this up. So now we have 1 cross, 2 cross, 3 cross, 4 crosses. We're going to do 5. We're going to do 1 more. Skip the next 2 stitches. Front post treble in the next 2. Get some more yarn. This does take a lot of yarn. Okay, so working in front of these 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2. Okay, let's stop and take a look. Okay, so now we have our braid begun here. These 2 spacer stitches, 2 double crochets worked in the top, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the Celtic weave crosses. And so now it's time to put another 2 spacers. We're just working through the top of these 2 stitches, just like that. Make sure you don't skip any stitches or double dip. You know, use the same stitch for more than 1 stitch. That would throw your stitch count off. Okay, now we're going to make a braid. Again, we're going to skip 2, front post treble in the next 2 stitches. Working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped. Let's get that hair out of there. We don't need to crochet too much of that into our work. Little DNA bonus, I suppose. Okay, now that we've done that, it looks a lot like what we just did here, but this is what's going to make it different. We're going to front post treble in the very next 2 stitches. Just like that. Okay, now we have 2 stitches left here. 1, 2. We just work a double crochet in each of those stitches. 1 and 2. All right, and we are done with row number 2. Let's take a look at that. Make sure you have those 5 Celtic weave crosses in the middle and a braid on each end, and 2 of these spacer stitches that help divide the Celtic weave from the braided cable. Now we're ready to begin row 3, chain 3, and you should have the back side facing you now. Now we're going to skip this first double crochet, and we're just going to double crochet in the next double crochet, because this chain 3 here actually acts as a double crochet. So we're always going to have these 2 stitches along the edge. Now we're going to work the back side of the braided cable, and it's worked actually the same as the front side, with the exception that we're working back post treble crochets. We're going to skip these 2 stitches, and the 2 stitches that are kind of leaning, we're going to back post treble. To back post, we bring our hook from the around the back side and go out the back door, so to speak. Pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Just where we go in, we're going in on the back side. Okay. If this is not real clear and you need additional prolonged support, I do have stitch videos available on my channel. And you can spend some time studying that, or even making a small swatch at home, maybe with yarn that's maybe easier to work with, just so you can practice that. Okay, now working in front of these 2 stitches as seen from this side, we're going to back post treble crochet in the 2 stitches here that we skipped. I'm going to flip this up so that you can see. Okay, so we're going to come around and grab this stitch and then complete that back post treble crochet, and then do the next stitch as well. Okay, so we've done these 2, and then these 2, and then now we're going to do just the very next 2. We're not skipping anything now. We're going to do the next 2, which come right here. You can see where my thumb, or my finger is here. So we come around and get those very next 2 treble crochets, and again, we're working back post treble crochets. Now we're going to work in the 2 double crochets just by working in through the top loops. Again, use these 2 fingers to help you feel your way as to where that hook should go. That they really are helpful. Okay, now we're going to do the back side of the Celtic weave. And this does vary a little bit more from the braided cable. This is what we're going to do. We're going to actually not going to skip anything to start. We're going to start with the next 2 stitches, whichever 2 stitches they are, and notice how they are leaning towards us. Just the very next 2 stitches, we work back post treble crochet over those. And now we're ready to start skipping. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches. They're leaning this way, and we're going to do these 2 that are leaning the opposite direction. We're going to do these 2 first. Back post. This is all back post treble crochet. Let's get some more yarn here. Now, working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to actually work over these 2. Now, this is probably the most challenging part of the Celtic weave. They're hard to see, these stitches, but you can feel them very easily. So that's why I suggest you use these 2 fingers and feel for these 2 stitches. Okay, so once you get them, then you can work those back post treble. And I'll show you. This is the second one. And these are also very easy to forget. So if you ever lose stitch count, it's probably because these hidden stitches have been forgotten. Now we're going to skip these next 2 stitches. These are the 2 that we're going to come and do in just a second. And then we go for the next 2. We work our back post treble over these 2 stitches. Now working in front of these as seen from the front side, we go, let me show you, the hook is coming in here, if that helps. Work back post treble. And we're going to do that again, coming in here. Now before I do the next 2, I'm going to turn this around and show you what's happening here. Okay, this was the braid that we're working on. Now this is our Celtic weave. Now this is the first 2 that we did. We didn't cross any. And the reason we're doing this is this line is going to come over here, kind of like a Celtic knot. It's going to come over here, and then it's going to be woven in, and then it's going to come to the other side, and then it's going to turn. You're going to want to turn it and to come back into the work. Okay, so that you don't have to worry about knowing about that. Just know that you do these first 2 when the back side is facing, and then everything else is going to actually literally be woven. It's going to go up and down like it's woven. Okay, let's go ahead and do the last 2. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches here, and then back post treble in the next 2. It's going to feel like it's a large distance too as you're doing this. It may feel like half a mile across as you're, or a kilometer for those of you in the UK. Exaggerating here. It may feel like, oh gosh, that's a kilometer away, but it is a reach. But as you come and do the stitches underneath, it really does fill in the gaps. So now I work those other 2. Again, using my fingers to help feel my way here. And that's the other one. Okay, got one more. Skip the next two, and then back post treble over the next 2 stitches. Working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to back post treble over those 2 hidden stitches. All right, now we only have 2 stitches left. So and when we get to the end of the Celtic weave, we don't skip anything. We just do those last 2 stitches. And this is partly because we didn't skip any at the beginning, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, let's turn around and look at the front again. I'm probably explaining way too much, but I just would rather have too much information than not enough. Here in the front side facing, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 crossings, or little X's, Celtic X's, okay? Now, with the back side facing, this is the back side we just worked, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have these other 2 stitches here, and these other 2 stitches here on the sides. So you still have a total of 20 stitches in this section. It's just the way the stitch is designed. When you get with the back side facing, this end stitch again is going to curve and go back into the work here. Then these are going to curve up and weave in. And as we have more rows completed, you'll understand that a little bit better. Okay, now it's time to do those 2 double crochets just worked in through the top 2 loops. And then after that, it's time to do another braided cable. Skip the next 2 stitches, back post treble in the next 2. Pull through all the loops, and now we're going to work in front of these as seen from the front side, and we're going to back post treble in the 2 stitches that were skipped. Now we don't skip any here, we just simply do the next 2 stitches back post treble crochet. Now to work the last 2 double crochets, I'm going to work in the top of that double crochet, and we have the chain. I am just going to go right into the big hole here. I'm not even going to pick out a strand of the chain. I'm going to work right in that chain because that's going to make it stronger. All right, so now we have 3 rows completed. Now for the remainder of this scarf, you are going to, or wrap rather, you're going to repeat rows 2 and 3. So I'll go ahead and start on another repeat of row 2. I've chained 3. I'm going to skip the first double crochet and double crochet in the next stitch. And now we're working on our braided cable. Skip 2 stitches. And this should be a little easier this time around. Front post treble in the next 2 stitches. Now working in front of the last 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. And now we don't skip any stitches, we just do the next 2 stitches. We work front post treble the next 2. After this, we're going to work double crochets in the next 2 stitches. Just worked right through the top. Be careful that you don't accidentally work treble crochets here, okay? We really need these to be double crochets. If they're treble, it's going to be too long. Now we're to the point of doing the Celtic weave, and this is what we do 5 times across. I'm just going to do it a couple times so I don't bore you to tears, but we're going to skip 2, front post treble in the next 2 stitches. Now working in front of the last 2 stitches that we just worked, we are going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped. Now we're going to do that 4 more times. Skip the next 2, which are right here, and then front post in the next 2. You're always going to be working these 2 stitches that lean this direction first, and then we get the ones that are hidden underneath. That goes for both directions. Okay, so now working in front of these 2, use our fingers to find those 2 stitches hidden underneath. Okay, and we're going to do that again. Skip 2, front post treble in the next 2. Notice that they're leaning this direction. Now working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to work in these 2 stitches. Again, use your thumb and tall man finger to find where these stitches are. You can feel them. Whoops, let's go ahead. I didn't wrap the hook 2 times. We make sure with this is a treble, front post treble crochet. Okay, I said I was only going to work 2, and I think I've already worked 4. Let's stop and see what we have here. Okay, so I've worked 3 sets. 1, 2, 3. So go ahead and do that over the next 2. Actually, let me go ahead and do these with you. Skip 2, 1, 2, and then front post treble in the next 2 stitches. I will finish out this row with you because I know this can be really tricky at first. After doing those 2, we work in front of these stitches and we find the 2 hidden stitches here. And go ahead and front post treble crochet into those. And then we just have 1 more. Skip these 2, 1, 2, and then front post treble in these 2 stitches. Working in front of these 2 stitches, front post treble in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. Okay, that brings us again to those 2 double crochets. Work in through the top loops. Okay, now we're ready to work the next braided cable. Skip 2, front post treble the next 2 stitches. Also, if you ever get confused and you're not near a computer or able to pull up the video, the book has a lot of still photographs step by step for every one of these stitches, and they're clearly marked. A lot of nice photos, so you can pull them up whenever. All right, so after that we work in front of these 2 and we front post treble in these 2 stitches that were just skipped. All right, and now we don't skip any here. We just front post treble in the next 2 stitches. These are always for stitch number 5 and 6 of that braided cable. Remember not to skip before those last stitches. Now we double crochet in the last 2 stitches, one of them through the top of that double crochet and the other into the chain 3 space. Let's stop and take a look at what we have, and you're starting to see the braid hopefully a little bit better now. You can see how the braid is coming together. The Celtic weave is much more defined, and this braid over here. All right, well, let's go ahead, and I'm going to do one more row with you. This will be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. This will be row number 5. Again, row number 5 is a repeat of row number 3. We chain 3 to begin, and then we're going to skip the first double crochet and double crochet in the next double crochet, working the braid, skip the first 2 stitches, back post treble crochet over the next 2, working in front of this stitch, these 2 stitches as seen from the front side. Okay, we're going to go and work those 2 stitches that we skipped with back post treble crochets. Okay, now we don't skip anything. We don't skip any stitches here. We just do the next 2 back post treble crochet, and get that next stitch. Okay, now we go to those 2 double crochets. Just work right through the top. Make sure you just wrap your hook once for those. Okay, now the back side facing with the Celtic weave. We start out, remember, we don't skip anything at first. With the back side facing, we do back post treble crochet in the next 2 stitches. Now we skip the next 2 stitches, these 2, and then the 2 that are leaning this direction towards us, we work back post treble crochets over them. Working in front of these 2 as seen from the front side, we're going to work back post treble over these 2 stitches. We come in the back door. Again, use your fingers to show you where to go. Whoops, let's try that one again. Got away from me. So I'm going to go ahead and, well, I'll go ahead and finish this with you. Now we're going to skip the next 2 stitches here, back post treble over the next 2. And working in front of these as seen from the front side, I'm going to go ahead and back post treble in those 2 skipped stitches. Let's do that one again. And for the record, this is one of those projects that is crocheted rather loosely. And the more loosely it is, well, it doesn't have to be too loose, but you shouldn't be crocheting this real tightly. Okay, skip the next 2 stitches, back post treble in the next 2. Working in front of these as seen from the front side, go ahead and back post in those 2 stitches that you just skipped. Now we just have one more of the crossing. Going to skip the next 2 stitches, back post treble in the next 2. Working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to back post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped here. Let's go ahead and pull that one through. There you go. Oh, let's just do that one again. It got away from me. So if that happens to you, you know it happens to the best of us here. Multiple times too. Okay, and then the second stitch. Now that brings us to the last 2 stitches of that Celtic weave section. We don't skip anything, any stitches. We just do the next 2 with back post treble, not double. Let's go ahead and wrap our needle twice. Yes, I just called my hook a needle. That's actually a synonym for it. Long before the word hooking and hooks became popular, knitting needles, crochet needles were all called needles. Just to let some of you young folk understand that, just the way it used to be called back in the day. Now we work double crochets in those next 2 stitches, our little spacer stitches. That helps us to define the differing cabling sections. And now we do the final braid. Skip 2, back post treble in the next 2 stitches. And then working in front of these 2 stitches, I've seen from the front, we're going to come around and do those 2 stitches that we skipped with back post treble crochets. And now we don't skip anything. Any stitches, we just do the next 2 stitches with back post treble crochets. I didn't wrap my hook enough times. Wrap it twice. Okay, now I'm going to work in through the top. Work double crochets in that double crochet, and then work 1 going right into that chain 3 space. So let's go ahead and turn and see what we have now. You can see this fabric is nice and soft and squishy. So maybe now you can see more of a braid forming here. I think you can. And then here is the Celtic weave section. And let me stop, and you can see how these last 2 and then the first 2 that you don't skip, when you have the backside facing, how this has gone in and is coming into the weaving here. And this one will do the same. And over here, this one already started that way, and then this is doing the same. You can see how the Celtic knot effect takes place there with that stitch. And you can see the braid coming together here. So now all you need to do is repeat rows 2 and 3 until you get to the length of the scarf, or until you get to the number of rows. I'll post the number of rows right there on the bottom of the screen. Okay, so go ahead and repeat that continually. If you need stitch support, simply back up this video to where it's labeled row 2, and you can crochet along stitch by stitch every row if you'd like. All right, so I'll see you in a few rows. Okay, I've completed approximately 40 rows, and I wanted to give you a view of the fabric. And as you can see, this is really nice and squishy, really drapey, and nice and thick and soft. Okay, so I am nearing the halfway point in my scarf. There is some advice I wanted to give you before you finish this. And that is, when you get to the last or the 5th scan of yarn, I encourage you to go ahead and follow the directions that I'm going to show you in just a few minutes for making the fringe. I would go ahead and cut the fringe with the yarn that you have so that you don't run out of yarn, quite frankly. And I will show you how to make and attach in just a minute, but go ahead and work on that and set out the strands that you need ahead of time. And then what you can do is just finish crocheting with the yarn you have. That way you can, use up all the yarn if you'd like. or you can just stop when the shawl reaches 59 inches. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to crochet this when I get to the last scan. Again, cut the fringe, have it waiting for me, and then I'm going to, complete the length of this. Now, if you don't want 59 inches, you can make your shawl shorter, or you can make it longer. It's really all up to you. But what you do need to do is you need to end by working the row number 2 with the front side facing, and then I will show you the row to discontinue the shawl. Okay, I've worked my wrap until it has reached the desired length. In this case, I went until it was 60 inches long. You can make these as long or as short as you like. I'm actually going to even refrain from giving you the exact number of rows here, because it's really not that important, because depending on the yarn that you choose and your crocheting style, you might actually have more or less, and you might decide, even like I said, to make it shorter or longer, and by all means do that. Also keep in mind, if you make it longer, that you are going to be adding fringe, and that's going to also add length, so you want to be careful about making it too long. Okay, so now we're going to turn and work the last row. This is with the back side facing, and this is what we are going to do. We're going to chain, I'm going to chain 2, or you can chain 3 if you'd like, but I'm just going to chain 2 because this is the last row, and I'm going to work those double crochets in through those first 2 stitches that we've been doing for all these other rows. Now when I get to the braided cable, I am just simply going to work back post double crochets straight across. Let me get some more yarn here. And let's just keep going. Back post double crochets. When you work across these braids, make sure that you have 6 of these back post double crochets, 1 for each of the post stitches. Now when we get to these stitches that are the divider stitches, go ahead and work through the tops, working double crochets. Now when we get to the Celtic weave section, you guessed it, we're just going to work back post double crochets all the way across. So go ahead and do that. I'm going to skip ahead here, but you go ahead and work those back post double crochets across the Celtic weave. After finishing all those back post double crochets across the Celtic weave, then we just work those double crochets in those 2 stitches where we just work in through the top loops. And then we just have this braided cable again. Work back post double crochets over the next 6 stitches of that braided cable. And then after that, we just have 2 stitches to go. We're going to work double crochet in that last double crochet, and then double crochet in that chain 3 space. And we're going to go ahead and fasten off. I'm going to give it a chain and give it a little tug. And I'm going to cut myself a nice long strand here so that I can hide it. Let's go ahead and pull it through. Make sure it's nice and snug there. Now this is where our yarn needle comes in handy. I'm just going to show you how to hide one of these threads. I'm sure you have several others to hide after connecting all the yarn scans. Okay, so I've got my needle threaded, and I do like to do this on the back side. And with this type of yarn that's so fluffy and curly, it's going to be pretty easy to hide these strands. I don't think they're ever going to be seen again. At least that's the hope, right? Okay, So, and I'm going to actually work this into my yarn just a little bit here, because I don't want these to be popping out, especially if it's a gift that I give to someone, and the last thing I want is for them to have to, deal with these loose threads showing up. And one thing I like to do too is kind of go back the other direction, give it a little bit of leverage here. Okay, so I'm just running this long strand under those stitches. I'm going to give it a tug, and now this is where I have to be very careful. I want to cut this strand, but I don't want to cut my stitches. I know I say that a lot for those of you who've seen my other videos, but this is really important. And I'll say again, if you do any of these projects and you decide to enter them into any contest like state fairs or county fairs, by all means, take the time you need to hide all these loose threads. I have a lot of threads still to hide here. But during the judging process, if you leave these undone, this is going to really knock the scoring down on your project. And if you hide them all and hide them well, and you do nice stitching, you may just be rewarded with some beautiful awards or beautiful ribbon. Anyway, let's go ahead, and I'm going to show you how to make fringe now and attach it to the bottom of this throw to really make it pop.
Okay, now that I have my 60 inches of my wrap, and just to show you, I still have a lot of strands to hide. Had some trouble with one of those skeins of yarn. But we are now ready to start making the fringe. And first of all, we have to cut the fringe, and I'll show you how to do that right now. Okay, to begin, we're going to need either a piece of cardboard, or my preferred is a book. And this needs to be at least 12 inches long. I think this is just about 12 inches or a little bit longer. And you're going to need a sharp pair of scissors, and of course your yarn. I mentioned it earlier in the video. I actually saved the last skein of yarn, and this is what I'm going to start my fringe with. You could have done this sooner than before you finish. If you wanted to make your project longer, I encourage you to go ahead and cut the fringe now, and then you can attach what's left to the bottom of your scarf, wrap, Liffy, and a Jiffy. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to trim this little section off the bottom there because I don't like the way that was looking. And in order to do this, we're going to pull. I'm going to just let this roll around on the floor. Okay, so we're going to use the book as our guide. I'm going to hold it right up here, and then I'm going to wrap this. For each tassel, we're going to need 5 strands, and we're going to need 11 tassels for each end. So I'm going to count to 5 11 times. Okay, so I have wrapped this 5 times, and as I wrap this, I want to be careful not to pull it too tightly, and of course you don't want it to be too loose that it falls off. So that's going to be 1 tassel. Now this is be 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's going to be 2. And this yarn is going to roll all over the floor and be a little difficult for me, of course. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's going to be 3. I'm just going to cut 5 for you. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So that's 3 sets. 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's pull some more, and 5, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5. Okay, so now I have all my yarn for 5 tassels, and remember I'm going to do this for 11 for both sides, and to cut enough for both ends, that's going to be 22. So 22 times 5 tassels, or 5 sets of strands for each tassel. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this. Make sure you have a pair of scissors that actually cut and doesn't just gnaw the fabric. So you want a nice clean cut. And so now I have enough for 5 tassels. I'm going to set that aside, and then I'm going to do this until I have enough for 22 tassels. Okay, now that we have all of our yarn cut, we're going to set this aside. And I'm going to put the book aside as well, because I don't need that any longer. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to attach to the end of the wrap here. Okay, so I'm going to get 5 strands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure you can see this. I'm going to move this so that it's not quite in the way. And I'm going to just do my best. It doesn't have to be perfect now. Line these up, as best as you can on one end, and then kind of smooth them out, and then bring them over. Let's see if I can get, there we go. Bring them so that they're kind of even at the end, and then you can kind of, pull it so that you have the center right up here. And we're going to need your crochet hook, and we're going to start at the very end where that chain 3 space is. I stick the hook from the back to the front, all the 5 loops over the hook. I pull them through the hole like this. Okay, now I'm going to put all the strands over the hook and then pull it through like this, and then give it a tug, and we have finished. I can put it out. We finished attaching the first. So what I like to do, I'm going to be doing this 11 times, and rather than go sequentially, like from here all the way over to this side, I'm going to do the opposite end right here next, and then I'm going to do the one in the center, and then I'm going to evenly distribute the rest so that they're evenly distributed along the end. Okay, so we go ahead, find the middle, again coming in from the back side of the wrap to the front, put all the strands over the hook, pull it through. Now pull it through an inch or two, because you got to have room for all these other strands to come through as well. Now wrap the back of the hook with all those other strands and pull it through. It's kind of important that you do them all the same way so that the front side of the knot is showing all the way across. So let's go ahead and do the middle now. I'll get my 5 strands. And again, I'm going to even them up as best I can. Fold it over. Try to get them as even as I can. And if they're not perfectly even, that's not a problem, because we do have a little bit of extra fabric on the end so that we can trim them once we go across. So let's try to find the middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the middle is going to be right here, right in the center of where that first, near where that first Celtic weave cross happened. And pull those through. All yarn over and pull it through. Okay, now if you don't like the way the knot comes out, you can always just simply pull it out and try again. I've done that many times, trust me. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to go ahead and do the next section here. Okay, so now that we have 3, okay, so let's go ahead. Let's see how many we're going to have between here. We have, so we have 8. So we're going to have 4 evenly spaced in between here. So let's go ahead and do that. That's 1. I'm going to do one on the other side, about equally spaced. Okay, I'm going to put it right here. And that's, didn't even show you, I'm sorry about that. So this is about on this side. And let me do 2 more. Again, I know this is repetitive and a bit redundant, but If there's any beginners out there, I don't want you to be afraid of these intermediate projects. If it looks like, hey, I can do that, you know, if you feel like you have the faith and a little bit of the skills to do it, by all means jump in, and there's never a problem with making mistakes because you can just rip them out. That's what's wonderful about crochet. You don't have to, you know, redo 100 rows or anything, but you know, you can easily rip things out and do it all over again. So I'm going to do one more for you, and then what you will need to do is just do the same thing on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm evening these up. Go ahead and find the halfway point, and I'm going to put this right in between these two, just like this. Okay, so I've gotten some of these done for you already. So now all you got to do is finish doing this on the other side. And again, you can just kind of eyeball it and do 4 evenly spaced. And if you wanted to even use, let's say, stitch markers to kind of mark where it would look best before you put it on, you can do that too. Whatever you need to do to help you out. Okay, now that all the fringe, the tassels have been attached, I'm just going to trim this up just a little bit because I'm actually quite happy with the way these came out. But, you know, feel free to trim what you need off the bottom, and make sure that, you know, again, have those sharp pair of scissors, and try to trim them all about the same if you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, we're not going for perfect. We're going for excellent where we can, and we're going to enjoy the learning process. So go ahead and trim up the ends. Well, except for hiding a few loose ends, which I'm going to get to in just a minute, I am all done with my Liffy in a Jiffy project that, again, is found in Contemporary Celtic Crochet. If you like doing this project with the cabling, there's another project that's also in this book, and the free video tutorials are actually on my YouTube channel. If you just go to the search bar in the top, you can write in the word Hialeah Honey Baby Blanket. Hialeah is spelled Hialeah. It's actually my hometown in Florida. And the baby blanket that I'm mentioning is named after that. And the pattern is in here. The free video tutorial is right here on this channel. Well, I just thank you for joining me for this project, and just want to wish you God's blessings. Bye-bye.